You're in danger.
The note burned in his palm before he even unfolded it. 7 words that meant he wouldn't survive the landing. Across the cabin, his brother laughed, already counting the seconds until armed men swarmed the runway. If the warning was true, trusting the wrong person would get him killed. So who was the real traitor? I had 12 minutes before the descent chime sounded and the ambush waiting on the tarmac turned lethal. My fingers gripped the pen just tightly enough to keep the ink steady as I creased the napkin into a tight square. The fabric felt flimsier than a whisper, like it might unravel mid-pass. Around me, the Gulf Stream's cabin purred with refined restraint, soft leather creaks, ice clinking in crystal tumblers, the faint hum of engines slicing through the night sky at 35,000 feet. Outside, the Atlantic stretched endless and black below, indifferent to the lives aboard. But in here, everything was controlled, too controlled, airtight. I approached the forward conference table like I was stepping into a crosshair. Matteo Conti sat at the head, facing the windows that framed nothing but clouds and stars like a crown of voids. He looked forged from shadow, chiseled features, dark hair combed precisely, a Brioni suit sharp enough to cut through my composure. His hand cradled a glass of scotch, fingers tapping a deliberate, unyielding cadence. Beside him, Luca Conti leaned back casually, murmuring something that drew a thin smile to his lips. His gold cufflinks glinted under the cabin lights, casting sharp reflections across the polished wood. He looked like a brother in trust. He wasn't. 15 minutes ago, I'd heard him seal Matteo's death. Now let's take a pause. If you're enjoying this story, click the subscribe button, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more wonderful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get back to the story. The galley on this charter wasn't really a galley. It was a compact sanctuary mid-cabin, all stainless steel and ambient glow that made the stemware shimmer like artifacts. I'd been sent back to fetch a fresh bottle of Perrier for seat 4A, weaving past the stocked cabinets and chilled drawers when I heard voices, male, clipped, speaking Italian. I paused behind the partition, my hands still on the fridge handle. My Italian was service level at best, enough to distinguish Prosecco from Pinot, but I caught shards. Fratello, Venduto, Adoraggio, Armati. Waiting. Yes, he's in the forward section by the windows. The words fractured through the hum. Brother, sold out, landing, armed men. And then one switched, his tone dropping to something edged and urgent that sounded like Sicilian dialect, quicker and denser, like he was threading a noose with his syllables. I should have made a noise, rustled a tray, announced my presence like protocol demanded. Instead, I stood frozen, pulse roaring, and absorbed it. He continued in that dialect, something guttural and vowel-heavy I couldn't fully untangle, but the intent was crystal. This wasn't idle talk. It was orchestration, a timer set. Footsteps shifted against the carpet, heading toward the main cabin. I flattened against the bulkhead, hoping the dim lighting and equipment would swallow me. Through the slim gap in the partition, I glimpsed him tall, composed, in a tailored suit that screamed inherited power. Dark eyes scanning ahead, gold cufflinks catching the glow. Luca Conti, the man currently lounging beside his brother, playing the part of loyal kin to the empire he'd just arranged to dismantle. He vanished forward, his cologne trailing, something bold and spiced that now reeked like betrayal's aftertaste. I lingered there for 20 seconds, 30, 40, waiting for my breath to steady. When I finally emerged back into the passenger area, Perrier forgotten, my mind raced to assemble what I'd intercepted. Forward section by the windows, armed at landing, brothers sold out. I stepped into the open cabin and everything sharpened into terrifying focus. The conference table setup. Matteo Conti and Luca Conti, Italy's whispered dynasty. He was mafia royalty. Everyone in the industry knew it, even if charters like this stayed off the manifest. Their bond had been untouchable lore for years. A betrayal disguised as fraternity. Or maybe just a betrayal disguised as. Matteo Conti did not flinch. He had learned long ago that the world punished visible reaction the way wolves punished weakness in the pack. So when the napkin brushed his palm, warm from her skin, Folded with deliberate care, he accepted the glass she offered with the same steady hand that had signed death warrants and marriage contracts alike. His fingers closed over the square of linen without hurry. He did not look at it yet. Instead, he met her eyes for the briefest fraction of a second. Dark brown, steady despite the tremor he'd felt in her touch. No panic. No plea for gratitude. Just quiet, unflinching certainty. Then she was gone, retreating down the aisle with the same practiced grace she'd shown all flight, tray balanced, posture perfect. Only then did he unfold the napkin beneath the edge of the table, shielding it from Luca's idle gaze across from him. Your brother sold you out. They're waiting. 7 words. Ballpoint ink, slightly smudged. No signature. Matteo refolded the napkin and slipped it into his inner jacket pocket as though it were a receipt for dry cleaning. He took a slow sip of scotch. Across the table, Luca laughed at something one of the lieutenants said, the sound easy and familiar. The same laugh he'd used since they were boys stealing figs from the neighbor's tree in Palermo. Matteo smiled back, thin, automatic, and felt nothing. Inside, his mind was already moving. Betrayal from Luca was not impossible. It had always been probable. Blood bound them, but ambition eroded blood faster than seawater eroded stone. Still, the note could be a plant. A rival feeding disinformation through a terrified crew member, or genuine warning from someone who had overheard too much. He needed confirmation, and he needed it before wheels down. Matteo set his glass down with deliberate care and pressed the call button once, short, precise. The senior purser appeared within seconds, face professionally neutral. Sir, inform the captain we'll be diverting to Teterboro instead of Morristown, Matteo said, voice low enough that only the purser and Luca heard. Weather concerns. Luca's eyebrows lifted slightly. Morristown's clear. Matteo met his brother's eyes. I prefer Teterboro tonight. Feet. Then Luca shrugged, smile returning. Your call. The purser nodded and vanished forward. Matteo watched him go, then allowed his gaze to drift, slowly, casually, around the cabin. 10 passengers total. 6 of his own men. 2 neutral business associates who knew better than to involve themselves. Luca. And the crew, pilot, co-pilot, and the flight attendant. Sofia Alvarez, her name tape read. She was in the galley now, back turned, arranging fruit on a platter that no one had requested. Her movements were economical, controlled. No nervous glances. No fidgeting. Interesting. He studied her the way he studied ledgers, looking for discrepancies. Posture too straight for someone who just committed career suicide, or heroism. Hands too steady for fear. She poured sparkling water into a flute with the calm of a woman refilling coffee at a diner, not one who just accused the second most powerful man aboard a fratricide. Either she was extraordinarily brave, or extraordinarily stupid, or she was something else entirely. Matteo leaned back, fingers steepled. The cabin lights dimmed subtly as descent began. Outside, the black Atlantic gave way to scattered lights along the eastern seaboard. He felt the shift in engine pitch, the gentle bank as the jet adjusted course. No one else seemed to notice the change except Sofia. She paused mid-motion, head tilting fractionally toward the cockpit door, as if listening to the new heading. Then she resumed her task. Very interesting. 20 minutes later, the wheels touched down smoothly on Teterboro's shorter runway. The jet taxied toward a private hangar lit only by discreet ground lights. No welcoming committee, no fuel truck yet, no customs officials waving them in. Matteo's phone vibrated against his chest. He answered without looking at the screen. Speak. His security chief's voice was tight. Original airstrip was hot. 8 armed men in 2 vans, plus a sniper on the tower. They scattered when we rolled up empty-handed. Someone tipped them we weren't coming. Matteo's expression didn't change. Casualties. None on our side. We took 2 alive. They're talking. Good. Clean it up. I want names by morning. He ended the call. Across the aisle, Lucas stretched, yawning. Early night. Productive flight, at least. Matteo watched his brother unbuckle and stand. Yes, he said softly. Very productive. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Passengers rose, gathering briefcases and coats. Ground crew appeared to open the door and lower the stairs. Sophia moved through the cabin one last time, collecting glasses, her face serene. As Matteo descended the steps into the cool New Jersey night, his phone buzzed again, this time a text from the same security chief. 2 detainees confirmed. Contract traced to LC. Luca Conti. Matteo paused at the foot of the stairs, breathing in the scent of jet fuel and distant pine. Confirmation. The note had been real. He turned slowly, looking back up at the open door. Sophia stood framed in the light, securing the galley for shutdown. She glanced down, directly at him, and for a moment their eyes locked across the distance. No triumph. No fear. Just quiet acknowledgement. Then she disappeared inside to finish her checks. Matteo walked toward the waiting black SUVs, mind already mapping next moves. Isolate Luca. Extract full scope. Neutralize remaining threats. But one thread remained loose. The flight attendant. Brave enough to warn him. Smart enough to do it without exposing herself. And now, whether she knew it or not, dangerously indispensable. He slid into the back seat and pulled out his phone. One more call. Find out everything about the flight attendant, he said quietly to the man on the other end. Sofia Alvarez. Background. Family. Finances. Debts. Lovers. Everything. Quietly. He ended the call and stared out at the hangar lights. A variable had entered his equation. He needed to understand exactly what kind. Sofia Alvarez stepped off the Gulf Stream into the crisp New Jersey night, believing the worst was over. The air smelled of aviation fuel and distant rain, a sharp contrast to the recycled cabin atmosphere she'd breathed for the last 8 hours. Her legs felt unsteady, not from turbulence, but from the residue of adrenaline that had kept her upright through descent. She rolled her shoulders under the uniform jacket, adjusted the strap of her crew bag, and allowed herself one quiet exhale. She had done it. She had warned him. And somehow, miraculously, no one had noticed. The other crew members moved ahead of her down the mobile stairs, captain and co-pilot chatting about clearance times, the junior attendant scrolling her phone already. Sophia lingered at the base, pretending to check her watch while scanning the dimly lit tarmac. Private hangar. No press. No paparazzi. No usual charter bustle. Just 3 black SUVs idling in formation and a handful of ground staff who kept their eyes averted. Matteo Conti and his entourage had already disappeared into the vehicles. Luca Conti's laugh had echoed once as he climbed in light, carefree, then the doors shut and the convoy rolled away. Sophia watched the taillights vanish through the security gate. Good, she told herself. Clean break. Back to anonymity. She turned toward the crew van that would take them to the hotel for the mandated rest period before the return leg. Her plan was simple. Shower, sleep, forget. She'd flown routes for worse men than Matteo Conti and never lost a minute of sleep over it. Tonight should have been no different. But as she crossed the apron, she felt it, the prickle at the back of her neck that had kept her alive in places like Caracas and Dubai. Eyes on her. Not casual glances from ground crew. Deliberate. Sustained. She kept her pace even, resisting the urge to look around. Years of training never betray awareness. Instead, she used peripheral vision and reflections in the polished fuselage. 2 men near the fuel truck. One leaning against the hangar door, phone to his ear but not speaking. Another inside the terminal glass, watching the ramp. None of them wore airline lanyards. None of them belonged here. Sophia's stomach tightened. Coincidence, she reasoned. Private charters always had extra security. Probably Matteo's people sweeping for threats after the last-minute diversion. Still, she quickened her step just enough to join the other attendants at the van. The driver greeted them with a nod and opened the side door. She climbed in last, taking the rear seat, and pulled out her phone to fake interest in messages. Through the tinted window, she watched the 2 men by the fuel truck separate, one heading toward the terminal, the other walking parallel to the van's route. Not coincidence. The van pulled away, tires humming on concrete. Sophia forced slow breaths. You're tired. You're paranoid. You interfered in something enormous and now every shadow feels personal. But she knew better. The hotel was a low-profile boutique near the airfield, standard for high-end charters. Crew check-in was seamless. Key cards distributed. No questions. Sophia took the elevator alone to the 4th floor, swiped into her room, and only then allowed her hands to shake. She dropped her bag, locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, and wedged a chair under the handle for good measure. Old habit from layovers in sketchy cities. Then she stood at the window, parting the curtains just enough to see the parking lot below. A dark sedan idled 2 rows back from the entrance. No lights. Engine running. She let the curtain fall. "Get a grip," she whispered to her reflection in the dark glass. "You delivered the note. He acted on it. Your part's done." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Someone had reviewed the cabin footage. Someone had seen the handoff. Someone had connected the diversion to the warning. And in Matteo Conti's world, loose ends weren't tolerated. Sophia showered quickly, changed into jeans and a hoodie, street clothes, easier to run in, and repacked her bag with essentials only. Passport, cash, burner phone she kept for emergencies. She'd slip out the service exit, grab an Uber to Newark, catch the first flight anywhere. She was reaching for the door when the knock came. Soft. Polite. 3 taps. Room service? At 2 in the morning? She froze. A second knock, firmer. "Ms. Alvarez?" Male voice, calm, lightly accented. "Management needs a word." Her pulse spiked. Through the peephole, 2 men in dark suits, earpieces visible. Faces she didn't recognize. Not hotel staff. She backed away silently. Another voice, lower, muffled, outside the door. Then the electronic beep of a master key card. The lock clicked. Sophia snatched the desk lamp, yanking the cord from the wall, and positioned herself beside the doorframe. It swung inward. The first man stepped in, hand inside his jacket, and froze when he saw the room empty in his direct line of sight. She swung the lamp base with everything she had. It connected with his temple, solid, sickening thud. He staggered sideways. The second man was already moving, reaching. But a third figure appeared in the doorway behind them. Matteo Conti. Immaculate suit. No tie, expression unreadable. He raised one hand. Both intruders stopped instantly. The one she'd hit groaned, blood trickling from his hairline. The other straightened slowly, hand retreating from his jacket. Matteo's gaze flicked to Sophia, taking in the lamp in her white-knuckled grip, the overturned chair, her ready stance. Approval ghosted across his features, gone as quickly as it came. "Out," he said quietly to the 2 men. They obeyed without question, the injured one pressing a sleeve to his head. Matteo stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The room felt suddenly smaller. Sophia didn't lower the lamp. He noticed, but made no move to disarm her. "You have good instincts," he said, voice low, almost conversational. "Most people freeze." She found her voice. "Who were they?" "Clean up," he answered simply. "My brother is thorough." Her throat tightened. "They were going to kill me." "Yes." The single word landed like a verdict. She swallowed. "Because of the note. Because you were seen giving it." He tilted his head slightly. "And because Luca now knows someone warned me." Silence stretched between them. Finally she asked, "Why are you here?" "To stop them." She waited for more. It didn't come. "That's it," she pressed. "You save my life and walk away?" Matteo studied her for a long moment. "No," he said at last. "You don't leave yet." He turned and opened the door. 2 different men waited outside. Larger, professional, loyal. Matteo glanced back at her. "Pack your bag, Ms. Alvarez. You're coming with me." It wasn't a request. And in the quiet authority of his voice, Sophia understood. Her old life, the one where she disappeared into routines, served powerful men and walked away untouched, had ended the moment she slipped that napkin into his hand. She lowered the lamp. The drive from the hotel took 43 minutes. Sophia counted them on the dashboard clock of the black Escalade, sandwiched between 2 silent guards in the back seat. Matteo rode in the vehicle ahead. She caught only glimpses of his profile through tinted glass when the convoy turned. No one spoke. No one needed to. She had asked only once quietly where they were going. The guard to her left had answered with a single word, "Safe." Now, as the gate swung open onto a long gravel drive, flanked by stone walls and towering pines, she understood the shape of her new reality. The estate was beautiful in the way fortresses sometimes are, elegant, immaculate, and utterly impenetrable. Floodlights bathed manicured lawns the color of emeralds even in pre-dawn darkness. Security cameras tracked the vehicles with soft mechanical whirs. Men patrolled with rifles slung casually, as if violence were simply part of the landscaping. The house itself rose 3 stories, all pale stone and arched windows, more Tuscan villa than American compound. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish and old wood. A housekeeper, older, gray-haired, face unreadable, met them at the entrance and led Sophia up a sweeping staircase without a word. Matteo had disappeared down a corridor on the ground floor moments after arriving. Her room was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a hushed hallway. Large, airy, furnished with quiet luxury. King bed dressed in white linen, French doors opening onto a balcony, an ensuite bathroom bigger than her apartment back in Miami. The housekeeper set a small overnight bag on the bench, Sophia's own crew bag, retrieved from the hotel. Breakfast at 8, the woman said in lightly accented English. Mr. Conti will see you then. The door closed softly behind her. Sophia waited for the click of a lock. It never came. She tried the handle anyway. It turned freely. She stepped into the hall. Empty. Silent. At the far end, a guard sat in a chair reading a newspaper, rifle across his lap. He didn't look up, but she felt his attention shift the moment she appeared. She retreated. From the balcony, she could see the grounds. High walls topped with discreet wiring, gates manned by more armed men, dense tree lines beyond that suggested acres of buffered land. No visible way out. Not locked in but cannot leave. She showered, changed into the spare clothes from her bag, and sat on the edge of the bed until pale light began to seep through the curtains. At 8 sharp, the housekeeper returned and escorted her downstairs to a sunlit breakfast room overlooking the gardens. Matteo was already there. He stood by the windows, coffee in hand, dressed in a charcoal sweater and dark trousers, casual, yet somehow more commanding than the suit he'd worn on the plane. He turned when she entered. Good morning. His voice was the same, low, controlled, giving nothing away. Sophia remained near the door. Is this kidnapping? A faint curve touched his mouth, not quite amusement. No, he said. This is protection. He gestured to the table set for 2, fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, a silver pot of coffee. She didn't move. Matteo set his cup down. You saved my life, he said. That created a debt. But it also painted a target on you. My brother knows someone warned me. He will assume it was Crew. He will eliminate possibilities until he finds the right one. He met her eyes directly. I will not allow that. Sophia folded her arms. So I stay here until he's handled? Until it's safe. And who decides when that is? I do. The words landed softly, but their weight pressed against her chest. She walked forward slowly and took the seat opposite him. He poured coffee for her without asking how she took it, black, which happened to be correct. They ate in silence for a time. Finally she asked, How much do you know? That Luca chartered the hit through intermediaries in Naples. That he leaked the flight plan, landing slot, even the tail number. That the men waiting at Morristown were Albanian contractors, good ones. He paused. That he wanted me gone quietly, so the empire would fracture without a clear successor. Sophia absorbed this. Your own brother. Matteo's expression didn't change. Blood is not always loyalty. He studied her then, openly, deliberately. You speak Italian, he said. Not a question. Enough. Enough to overhear a plot. She lifted her chin. Enough to recognize when a man is about to be murdered. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps. He leaned back. Tell me what else you heard. She hesitated, then recounted the fragments. The references to the forward section, the timing tied to landing, the switch to dialect when discussing weapons. Matteo listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. Accurate, he said. We took 2 of the Albanians alive. They confirmed everything. Silence again. Then he asked, How did you know it was Luca? I didn't. Not at first. But the voice came from the galley, and only passengers had access mid-flight. The dialect was Sicilian, old school, the kind used when you don't want outsiders to understand. And he said, "Fratello." That narrowed it. Matteo's gaze sharpened. "You know Sicilian dialect?" "My grandmother was from Palermo." He absorbed that. "You noticed the cabin cameras," he continued. "You timed the handoff when the angle was blind." She shrugged. "I've worked private charters for 8 years. I noticed things. Such as..." She set her fork down. "Such as the way your brother's security detail shifted weight when the diversion was announced. Relief from your men, tension from his. Such as how Luca's phone buzzed 4 times in the last hour of flight, but he never answered it in front of you. Such as the routing itself. Morristown is convenient for the city, but Teterboro has tighter private access and fewer oversight eyes. You didn't choose it for weather. You chose it because you suspected compromise." Matteo went very still. For the first time since she'd met him, something like surprise crossed his features. "You read all that from one flight?" "I read people," she said quietly. "It's how I stay invisible. And alive." He studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You resent this," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." "Good," he replied, turning. "Resentment keeps you sharp. But understand, your life no longer belongs to chance. Not while Luca is breathing." He moved toward the door. "Rooms are yours to use. Grounds within the walls. Ask for anything you need." He paused at the threshold. "And Sophia." She looked up. "You are not a prisoner," he said. "But you are not free to die either." The door closed softly behind him. Sophia remained at the table long after the coffee had gone cold. She understood the danger. She even understood his logic. But the walls, visible and invisible, closed in all the same. Later that afternoon, she found him in the study. Dark wood, leather chairs, a map of global shipping routes pinned to one wall. He was on a call in Italian, voice low and lethal. When he ended it, he looked up. "Progress. Luca has gone to ground in Montreal," he said. "He's calling in favors." She nodded, then, almost without thinking, stepped to the map. "Your next likely intercept points," she said, tracing a finger along routes from the Mediterranean to the eastern seaboard, "are here, here, and here. Private airfields with lax customs. He'll avoid commercial hubs." Matteo came to stand beside her. "Why those?" "Pattern," she said. "I've flown them. They're used by certain charters that don't ask questions. And the holding companies tie back to shell entities I've seen on manifests linked to your competitors." He stared at the map, then at her. Slowly, he nodded. "Useful," he said quietly. The word hung between them. Not just brave. Useful. And in Matteo Conti's world, that was far more dangerous. Days blurred into a rhythm Sophia hadn't expected. Mornings. Coffee on the terrace. Matteo reading reports on a tablet, her pretending to read a book while absorbing every shift in his expression. Afternoons. Walks along the inner paths of the grounds, always within sight of the walls, always with a discreet guard trailing 30 paces back. Evenings. Dinner in the small dining room, conversation sparse but never forced. She waited for resentment to harden into fury. It didn't. Instead, a strange equilibrium settled. The estate was a cage, yes, but a spacious one, and the danger outside was real. She'd seen the intercepted messages on Matteo's phone when he left it unattended once. Grainy photos of her crew file, her apartment building, her usual layover hotel in Miami. Luca wasn't hunting blindly. Matteo worked relentlessly. From the study, she could hear muffled calls in Italian, English, occasionally French, coordinating sweeps, leaning on informants, tightening the net. He moved through the house like a storm contained in human form, quiet, controlled, inevitable. One evening, 10 days in, he found her in the library. She'd claimed the room early. A soaring space of dark shelves and leather armchairs, windows overlooking the rear gardens. She sat at a long table spread with printouts Matteo's men had delivered that afternoon. Intercepted emails, phone logs, shipping manifests. He paused in the doorway, watching her trace patterns with a pen. "You're still awake." "I couldn't sleep." He entered, closing the door softly. "Find something." She tapped a stack of pages. Your brother's communications follow a rhythm. Short bursts every 4 to 6 days, always from burner numbers routed through Montreal or Toronto. But look here, she slid a sheet toward him. 3 longer calls last week, all to the same encrypted app. That's not coordination. That's panic. Mateo pulled up a chair beside her, close enough that she caught the faint scent of his cologne, something cedar and smoke. He scanned the logs. Panic, he repeated quietly. He's losing allies, she said. The Albanians pulled out after the mist hit. The Naples contact went dark 48 hours ago. He's trying to salvage something, but the longer he hides, the more people recalculate their loyalty. Mateo leaned back, eyes on her rather than the papers. How do you see this so clearly? People are predictable when they're afraid, she said. I've watched passengers for years. Some hide fear behind arrogance, some behind charm. Luca's hiding behind silence now, but the gaps between messages are widening. He's waiting for you to make the first move. Mateo's gaze lingered. You're right. He reached for another file, bank transfers, and spread it between them. We traced payments to the contractors. Not from Luca's personal accounts. From a trust set up by our father. He's been siphoning for years. Sophia frowned. Why not just challenge you openly? Because he doesn't want the throne, Mateo said. He wants the empire to burn. He turned the page toward her. These transfers, timed to coincide with audits, regulatory probes, rival incursions. Every payment weakens a different pillar. Ports in Genoa. Banks in Zurich. Routes through the Baltics. If I die without a clear successor, the pieces fracture. Allies choose sides. Wars start. Luca walks away clean, maybe even plays savior to whatever's left. Sophia absorbed the scope. He's not trying to win, she said slowly. He's trying to erase you. Mateo's jaw tightened, the first crack she'd seen in days. Yes. Silence settled, heavy but not uncomfortable. She noticed then how close they sat, knees almost touching, shoulders aligned over the table. His sleeve brushed her arm when he reached for a pen. Neither moved away. After a moment he spoke again, voice lower. Our father built everything on loyalty. Blood above all. He made us swear it as boys. Luca and me, standing in his study, hands on the same Bible. A faint, bitter curve touched his mouth. Luca always smiled when he swore. I thought it was agreement. It was relief. Sophia stayed quiet, letting him continue. He resented the weight from the start. The expectations. The watching. I accepted it. He wanted out, but couldn't leave without destroying what tied him. So he chose this. He met her eyes. I should have seen it. You trusted him, she said. That's not weakness. Mateo studied her. Most people in my world would call it exactly that. I'm not most people. No, he said softly. You're not. The air between them shifted. Something warmer, more dangerous than strategy. He didn't move closer, but he didn't pull away either. Instead, he gestured to the papers. Help me finish this. It wasn't a question, but it felt like an invitation. She nodded. They worked late into the night, mapping Luca's likely safe houses, cross-referencing old travel patterns with current burner data. She pointed out inconsistencies in flight manifests he'd missed. He explained the underlying alliances she couldn't have known. At some point the guards changed shifts outside the door. The house settled into deeper quiet. When they finally paused, the clock read nearly 3. Mateo leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You should rest. In a minute. He watched her organize the pages into neat stacks. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do. Why? She met his gaze directly. Because if he wins, I'm dead anyway. And because she hesitated, then continued. Because I know what it's like to have family expect you to be someone you're not. Something softened in his expression. He reached across the table, not for papers, but to still her hand as she straightened a final sheet. His touch was light, deliberate. Thank you, he said. The words were simple, but the way he said them carried weight. She didn't pull away. After a moment he released her, but the warmth lingered. He stood, gathering the most critical files. We'll narrow the net tomorrow. 2 locations in Quebec stand out. She nodded. As he moved toward the door, he paused. Sophia. She looked up. My brother knows how I think, he said quietly. Every move I've made so far, he's anticipated versions of it. That makes him dangerous. He held her eyes. But he doesn't know how you think. The door closed softly behind him. Sophia sat alone in the lamplight, hands still tingling where he'd touched it. The cage hadn't opened. But for the first time, it felt less like captivity and more like alliance. The nights grew longer. Not in hours, the estate's clocks ticked the same, but in the way time stretched when two people circled each other in the half-light of a library, papers spread like a battlefield between them. They fell into a pattern. After dinner, Matteo would retreat to the study. Sophia would follow 20 minutes later, carrying coffee neither of them asked for. He never commented on the ritual, but the second cup was always waiting on the tray. They worked in near silence. Maps, satellite images, intercepted texts projected on a pull-down screen. She noticed how he leaned forward when concentrating, elbows on the desk, fingers steepled under his chin. How he rubbed his temple when a lead went cold. How his voice dropped half an octave when frustrated, though he never raised it. He noticed her too. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when thinking hard. The way she murmured Italian phrases under her breath while reading manifests. The way she never flinched at the graphic details of his world. Violence described in clinical terms. Casualties listed like inventory. One night, 2 weeks into the hunt, the screen showed thermal footage of a Quebec airfield. Luke is there, Matteo said quietly. Signature matches the heat patterns from his known vehicles. Sophia studied the grainy shapes. He'll move at dawn, she said. Look at the fuel truck positioning, ready for quick departure. And the guards are doubled on the east side. He expects approach from the road. Matteo nodded slowly. My instinct is to hit hard and fast. Surround before sunrise. She shook her head. That's what he wants. He turned to her, eyebrow raised. Explain. He knows you favor overwhelming force. He's left the east open. Too open. It's bait. The real escape is the drainage culvert here. She pointed to a faint line on the satellite overlay. I've seen it on charter approaches. It runs under the fence to a service road. He'll slip out on foot, meet a car half a mile away. Matteo stared at the screen, then at her. You're suggesting we wait. I'm suggesting we let him think he's escaped. Track him to wherever he feels safe. That's where the remaining pieces will be. He was quiet for a long moment. Finally, you're asking me to risk letting him vanish again. I'm asking you to trust that he's more valuable alive and running than cornered and desperate. The word hung between them, trust. Matteo's gaze flicked to her face, searching. He had never trusted anyone outside Blood. And Blood had betrayed him. Yet here she was, outsider, witness, variable, asking him to override instinct. He exhaled slowly. Set it up your way. The decision settled something in the room. After that, the guard around him softened. Not dramatically. Matteo Conti did not transform overnight. But small shifts appeared. He began asking her opinion first, not as confirmation but as starting point. He lingered after sessions, pouring wine instead of dismissing her. When a storm rolled in one night and thunder cracked overhead, he noticed her flinch, not from fear, but memory, and wordlessly moved his chair closer. Protection crept in. A new guard trailed her on walks, but Matteo's orders were clear, visible deterrence, not restriction. When she mentioned missing the sky, he had flight manuals delivered, technical volumes on Gulfstream systems, as if studying them might ease the ache of grounded wings. One midnight, after tracing another dead-end lead, he found her on the terrace staring at the stars. Couldn't sleep. Too much coffee. He came to stand beside her, hands in pockets. I used to fly myself, he said quietly. Small planes. Before, everything required armor plating. She glanced at him. You miss it. Control, he admitted. Up there, nothing reaches you unless you allow it. Sophia leaned on the railing. That's why I loved the job. No one could touch you at altitude. Problems stayed on the ground. They stood in silence, shoulder to shoulder, night air cool between them. Finally she spoke. You don't have to control everything here, you know. He turned to her. This isn't about the estate. No, she said. It's about me. You decide where I go, what I see, who I speak to. You call it protection. I call it a leash. Mateo's expression tightened. I'm keeping you alive. You're keeping me, she corrected softly. There's a difference. The words landed without accusation, but they struck deep. He looked away, jaw working. You think I enjoy this? I think you're used to it. Silence again, heavier. Then, I don't know another way. The admission was raw, stripped of defense. Sophia turned to face him fully. Start by asking, she said. Not ordering. Ask if I want to stay in the library tonight. Ask if I want wine or coffee. Ask if I want to walk alone. His eyes met hers, dark, conflicted. And if you say no, then trust that I'm not running. Thunder rumbled distant. Mateo reached out slowly, fingers brushing her cheek, hesitant, as if she might pull away. She didn't. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. I'm not good at asking, he said, voice rough. I know. He leaned in, slow enough for her to stop him. She didn't. The kiss was careful at first, testing. Then deeper, inevitable. His hand slid to the nape of her neck, hers to his chest, feeling the steady, rapid beat beneath wool and muscle. For a moment, the world narrowed to warmth and breath and the faint taste of scotch on his tongue. Then a phone buzzed, sharp, insistent. Mateo pulled back, cursing under his breath in Italian. He answered. The conversation was brief, urgent. When he ended the call, his face had hardened again. Luca moved early. He's heading for the culvert. Sophia's pulse spiked. Your way, she asked. He looked at her, really looked. Your way, he confirmed. He made the call. Teams repositioned. The airfield strike aborted. Trackers deployed along the service road. 3 hours later, confirmation came. Luca extracted quietly, tailed to a lakeside compound 2 hours north. Remaining lieutenants gathered there. Names, locations, final pieces of the fractured plan. No shots fired. No lives lost. Mateo set the phone down and looked at Sophia across the study. She sat curled in an armchair, watching him. You were right, he said. I know. A faint smile ghosted his mouth. Then quieter, thank you. She unfolded from the chair and crossed to him. This time, she initiated, leaning in, forehead against his. You listened, she said. He closed his eyes. I'm learning. In the hush that followed, Sophia realized the truth settling warm in her chest. She mattered. Not as leverage. Not as witness. As someone whose voice could change his course and save lives in the doing. The cage hadn't vanished. But the door had cracked open. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through it alone. The plan took shape over 3 sleepless nights. Mateo fed the bait carefully. Small, believable leaks through channels Luca still trusted. A forged email from a mid-level captain hinting at a private flight out of a rural Ontario airstrip at dawn. Coordinates attached. Security light. Only 4 guards. An opportunity too perfect to ignore. Luca bit. Intercepts confirmed it. Frantic calls rerouting contractors from Montreal. Promises of double payment for speed. 8 men, heavily armed, converging on the field. Mateo's teams watched from a distance. Sophia watched too. She had insisted. Not from bravado, but from a need to see the endgame she'd helped design. Mateo had resisted, quietly, fiercely, until she said, if I'm part of this now, I don't hide from the consequences. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. Now, in the pre-dawn dark, she sat in the back of a nondescript van parked 2 miles from the airstrip, flanked by screens and hushed voices. Mateo stood beside the tech operator, earpiece in, eyes on thermal feeds. No lights inside the van except the glow of monitors. The decoy jet, a borrowed Learjet with fake tail numbers, touched down precisely on schedule. Ground crew in Mateo's colors guided it to the designated hangar. Sophia's pulse thrummed steady but loud in her ears. On screen, 8 heat signatures moving in from the tree line, professional spacing, no hesitation. Mateo's voice was calm into the calm. Hold. The hitmen breached the perimeter fence. 2 peeled off to secure the tower. 4 advanced on the hangar. 2 more circled toward the fuel trucks. Sophia watched them fan out like wolves scenting blood. She felt the shift before she heard it, Mateo's posture tightening fractionally. Now, the reversal was silent at first. Snipers on the surrounding ridges, Mateo's best, dropped the tower team before they could raise alarms. Suppressed shots, barely audible over the wind. The four advancing on the hangar walked into a kill box. Floodlights snapped on, blinding them. Mateo's ground team emerged from concealed positions inside the structure. 12 men, armored, coordinated. The hitmen realized too late. Firefights erupted in controlled bursts. Sophia flinched at the first muzzle flashes, bright white on the infrared feed. The sound reached them seconds later through open comms, sharp cracks, shouts in Albanian and Italian, the thud of bodies hitting concrete. It lasted less than 90 seconds. When the echoes faded, 8 heat signatures lay still. 0 casualties on Mateo's side. The van was quiet. Mateo removed his earpiece slowly. "It's done," he said into the calm cleanup. "Bring me the survivor." There had been one, wounded in the leg, disarmed, zip-tied. Sophia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Mateo turned to her. His face was unreadable in the dim glow, but his eyes searched hers. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands trembled faintly in her lap. "I've never," she trailed off. "I know." He reached over and closed her fingers around his, warm, steady. Outside, the sky began to pale. By the time they returned to the estate, the sun was fully up. Reports filtered in quickly. The hitmen were Luca's last contracted muscle mercenaries with no deeper loyalty. Interrogations confirmed the obvious. Luca had ordered the strike personally, believing Mateo would be aboard. Ports resumed normal operations by noon. No challenges from rival families. Bank partners in Zurich called to reaffirm lines of credit. Captains in Genoa and Baltimore sent encrypted pledges of continued allegiance. The empire didn't just stabilize. It solidified. Luca's betrayal had exposed cracks. Mateo's decisive response sealed them. Mid-afternoon, a helicopter landed on the rear pad. Mateo met it personally. Sophia watched from the terrace as 2 guards escorted a hooded figure from the chopper, hands bound, limping slightly. Even with the hood, the posture was unmistakable. Narrower shoulders than Mateo's, a familiar tilt of the head. Luca. They disappeared into the lower level, a soundproofed room Sophia had never seen. She didn't follow. An hour later, Mateo found her in the library. He closed the door behind him. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, faint smudges of dirt on his cuffs. His expression was calm, but exhaustion etched lines around his eyes. "It's over," he said. She set down the book she hadn't been reading. "He's alive. For now." Mateo crossed to the window, hands in pockets. He talked quickly. Names, accounts, contingencies. Everything we needed. He turned to her. "Your plan worked perfectly." He walked into it because he couldn't believe I'd wait. Sophia stood. "And now the remaining threads are cut. By tonight, there'll be no one left willing to carry his banner." He stepped closer. "Because of you." She shook her head. "Because you listened." A faint smile touched his mouth, tired, genuine. "Same thing." Silence settled, softer than before. Outside, the estate grounds looked deceptively peaceful, sunlight on manicured lawns, guards changing shifts with quiet efficiency. Inside, the weight of the morning lingered. Mateo reached for her hand again. This time she met him halfway. His thumb traced her knuckles. "Luca's in the cellar," he said quietly. "Alive. Secured." He held her gaze. "I haven't decided what comes next." The unspoken hung between them. Judgment, execution, exile. Whatever it was, it would end the last threat. Sophia nodded. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The counter-ambush had reversed more than an attack. It had reversed the balance. And in the quiet aftermath, with Luca captured alive below them, the estate no longer felt like a cage. It felt like solid ground. The cellar was colder than the rest of the house. Stone walls, low ceiling, a single bulb casting harsh light over a metal chair bolted to the floor. No windows. The air smelled of damp concrete and faint rust. Luca sat in the chair, wrists zip-tied to the arms, ankles to the legs. The hood had been removed. His face was bruised, lips split, but the defiance in his eyes remained, dimmed, but not extinguished. Matteo entered alone. He closed the heavy door behind him with a soft click that echoed like a verdict. Luca looked up. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Luca smiled, small, bitter. You came yourself. I'm flattered. Matteo pulled a second chair from the corner and set it opposite his brother. He sat, elbows on knees, hands loosely clasped. No shouting, Luca said mockingly. No drama. Just the quiet killer. Matteo's voice was level. Tell me why. Luca leaned back as far as the restraints allowed. You already know why. I want to hear it from you. Luca's gaze flicked away, then returned. Because you were always the one, he said quietly. From the start. Father's eyes followed you. His lessons were for you. His pride. I was the spare. The one who smiled and nodded and waited for scraps. Matteo didn't interrupt. I tried, Luca continued. I ran the routes. I made the deals. I bled when asked. But it was never enough. You were the heir. The one who could do no wrong. His voice stayed even. No hysteria. Just old poison seeping out. I didn't want your chair, Matteo. I wanted out. Clean. But the only way out was if the whole thing collapsed. No empire, no heir, no spare. Just ash. He met Matteo's eyes directly. So I lit the match. Silence stretched. Matteo's expression never changed, but something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition, perhaps grief. You could have left, he said. I would have let you. Luca laughed once, short, hollow. And live as the brother who ran? The coward? No. Better to burn it all. Matteo studied him. All those years, he said softly. The dinners. The toasts. The oaths. Acting, Luca replied. You were always better at believing. Matteo nodded slowly. He stood. From his waistband he drew a pistol, small, matte black, suppressor already fitted. Luca's breath hitched, just once. Matteo stepped closer. No last words. Luca asked, voice steady now. You've said them. Luca closed his eyes. The shot was muffled, a soft cough in the stone room. Luca's head slumped forward. Matteo stood over him a moment longer. Then he holstered the weapon and left. Sophia was waiting in the study. She'd heard the door close below, the faint sound that followed. She hadn't moved from the armchair by the window. When Matteo entered, he looked unchanged at first glance, suit immaculate, posture straight. But she saw the details, the faint tremor in his hand as he closed the door, the way his shoulders carried new weight. He poured a scotch but didn't drink it. She waited. Finally he spoke, voice rough. It's finished. She rose and crossed to him. I know. He set the glass down untouched. I thought there would be more, he said. Anger. Satisfaction. Something. He looked at her. There's just quiet. Sophia reached for his hand. He was your brother. Matteo's fingers tightened around hers. I killed him anyway. The words were flat, but the pain beneath them was raw. He pulled away suddenly and walked to the window, back to her. I've ended men before, he said to the glass. Traitors. Rivals. Threats. It was always clean. Necessary. He turned. This was different. His voice cracked on the last word. Sophia stepped closer. You didn't enjoy it, she said softly. That's what makes you different from him. He shook his head. I was raised to believe blood forgives everything. That it binds tighter than anything else. He met her eyes. Tonight I learned it doesn't. The confession broke something open. Matteo's composure fractured, not dramatically, but completely. His shoulders sagged. He leaned back against the window frame as if standing required too much. Sophia closed the distance. She took his face in her hands, gently, firmly. You did what you had to, she said. To survive. To protect what's yours. His eyes searched hers, desperate for absolution. I survived because of you, he whispered. The words were torn out of him. That note. Your voice in the dark. Every time I wanted to charge in, you pulled me back. You saw the traps I couldn't. He rested his forehead against hers. I killed my brother tonight. And I'm still here because you wouldn't let me die stupidly. Sophia felt the tremor running through him. She wrapped her arms around him. He let her. His arms came around her slowly, then fiercely, as if she were the only solid thing left. They stood like that for a long time. No more words. Just breath and heartbeat, and the slow return of steadiness. Outside, the estate slept under moonlight. Inside, the cost of power lay heavy in the air, but shared now, no longer born alone. Blood had not forgiven. But something else had begun to. Morning light filtered through the study windows, soft and golden. The estate was quiet in a way it hadn't been since Sophia arrived. No urgent calls, no encrypted messages buzzing on phones, no shadows waiting in corridors. The threat was gone. Luca was gone. The empire stood intact. Matteo stood at his desk, an envelope in his hand. He had waited until after breakfast, until the dishes were cleared, the staff withdrawn, the house settled into ordinary rhythm. Sophia sat in the armchair by the fireplace, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. She watched him approach, sensing the weight in his silence. He stopped in front of her and held out the envelope. She took it. Inside, a passport bearing her photograph but a different name, Elena Moreau. A driver's license in the same name. Bank cards tied to accounts already seated with enough money to disappear comfortably. A one-way ticket to Lisbon, departing in 4 days. And a handwritten note in Matteo's precise script. Everything you need. No one will follow. You will be safe. She looked up at him. He stood with hands in pockets, expression carefully neutral. This is freedom, he said quietly. A clean life. Anywhere you want. The skies again if that's what you choose. New routes, new crews. No one will know who you were. Sophia set the envelope on the side table. Why now? Because the danger is over, he replied. You stayed for survival. Now you can leave for the same reason. He didn't move closer. I won't stop you, he added. I won't ask you to stay out of debt or guilt. You saved my life. That debt is paid. The words were steady, but she heard the cost in them. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the gardens stretched toward the tree line, beautiful, contained. Beyond the walls, the world waited. Airports, cabins at altitude, the anonymity of uniforms and routines. She could go back. Board a crew bus at dawn. Smile at passengers who never learned her name. Disappear into service, into altitude, into the life where no one reached her unless she allowed it. She had missed that life fiercely in the beginning. Now the thought felt distant. She turned to him. I used to think invisibility was power, she said. Blend in, observe, walk away untouched. It kept me safe. Matteo watched her silent. I'm not invisible anymore, she continued. Not to your people. Not to rivals who might rise later. And not to you. She stepped closer. I could take that passport. Fly to Lisbon. Change my hair, my name, my routes. And maybe I'd be safe. She was near enough now to see the tension in his shoulders. But I wouldn't be me anymore. Matteo's voice was low. You'd be alive. I'm alive now. She reached for his hand. He let her take it. I choose this, she said. I choose you. Not because I'm trapped. Not because I'm afraid to leave. Because when I slipped you that note, something shifted. I stopped watching from the sidelines. She laced her fingers through his. I see you, Matteo. The man who listens when I speak. Who trusted my voice over his own instincts. Who carried his brother's death alone until he couldn't anymore. His grip tightened. You don't owe me your life for that. I know. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Soft, deliberate. When she pulled back, his eyes were darker, conflicted. You're sure? I've never been more sure. Relief and fear flickered across his face in the same breath. He pulled her into him, arms banding around her as if confirming she was real. I don't know how to do this, he murmured against her hair. How to keep you without caging you. We'll learn, she said. Together, they stood like that until the light shifted, until the coffee went cold, until the envelope on the table felt like a relic from someone else's life. Later, on the terrace overlooking the gardens, they watched the sun climb higher. Sophia stood beside Matteo. No guard trailing, no walls pressing in. His arm rested lightly around her waist, her head against his shoulder. The world beyond the estate still held danger, rivals who watched, debts that never fully settled, the endless calculus of power. But it was open-ended now. Shared. She slipped him a note once on a napkin at 35,000 feet to save his life, and chose to stay, knowing exactly what it would cost. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below for more stories from the Diaries of Love.